Hey everyone, here is our second video about the characteristics of living things. In this video, we're going to talk about the first four characteristics, so here we go. The first characteristic is that all living things are made up of cells. You can see here, this is an amoeba and this is a human, and amoebas are made of cells and so are humans. They are made of one or more cells. If they are just one cell, like the amoeba right here, that's unicellular. And if it is made of many cells like humans, then that is multicellular, and each of those different cells will be specialized to do a certain job. Like your bone cells do a different job than your muscle cells. So if you're multicellular, you can actually have cells that are specialized to do certain jobs. All right, so try not to look back, but if you need to, that's okay to rewind and look back. But what does unicellular mean? Well, it means you have one cell. And what is an example of a unicellular organism? That's an amoeba. And what does multicellular mean? Many cells. And what is it called when our stomach cells do a certain job, but our skin cells have a completely different function than our stomach cells? That's cell specialization. All right, next up, all living things can reproduce. So they can make new organisms out of an existing organism. If it is sexual reproduction, which is what most multicellular organisms do, they actually are able to exchange genetic material, and you get offspring that are different from their original parents. And you need two cells, one coming from each parent, in order for sexual reproduction to happen. This is an example of sexual reproduction. These are grebes. They're pretty funny. So they mate. There is a mother grebe and a father grebe, and you can see kind of here their mating ritual. I'm just going to speed it up for you. It's pretty interesting. He said, "Hey." You can see they're dancing together. Grebes, I believe, mate for life. So every year when they get back together, they would come together and do some sort of a mating ritual. And one cell comes from the mother, one cell comes from the father, and that's sexual reproduction. It will make offspring that are genetically different from each of the parents. And some organisms have elaborate mating dances like these grebes. Wow, there they are. And others do not. Others, it's just kind of a quick process. So that is a sexually reproducing example of grebes. Next, we have asexual reproduction as well, and that's when a single cell can actually divide in half to make a new organism, and that's called budding. And those organisms would come from one single parent. So that actually happens with Hydra. You can see a Hydra here. This is the original one, and then a bud has come off of it. You can see a little video of how that happens right down here if you look at the bottom of your screen. So there's the Hydra. It needs to make a new Hydra through budding, and it does not have a mate, so you never saw a mate. It's just one Hydra. It's going to have a bud grow off of it, and it detaches and then becomes a new bud that is exactly identical to its parent once it grows up. So kind of interesting. All right, so what type of reproduction only has one parent? That is called asexual. And almost all, what kind of organisms do sexual reproduction? Almost all multicellular organisms do sexual reproduction. Next, all living things are based on a universal genetic code, which in most cases is DNA. Occasionally it's RNA, but most of the time it's DNA. And that is how you get inherited traits passed from one parent to the next. It comes through the DNA. And in asexual reproduction, you get offspring who have identical DNA to their parents, and in sexual reproduction, the offspring are different from their parents. And you are already kind of an expert on DNA and how DNA copies from previous modules. All right, what is the universal genetic code? That's DNA. And which type of reproduction results in offspring with identical DNA to their parents? That's asexual reproduction. And the last thing is that living organisms all grow and develop. So part 4 of our characteristics of living things is that living things grow and develop. And you can see that here with the blue morpho butterfly, but grow just means to increase in size. And develop means to actually change. You quickly can change over time, and cells can specialize or have certain functions that are different than an earlier stage in life. So you can see with the blue morpho butterfly, you start with an egg, then you have a caterpillar, and then it grows into a larger caterpillar, chrysalis, and then finally a butterfly. Plants also are a great example of different stages of life with seed and germination and growth. So, what do we call it when organisms go through quick, intense change? That's development, if there's change. And as a butterfly develops, some of its cells become antenna cells, which have specific job of sensing the world around them. What do we call it when certain cells have specific jobs? We call it specialization. In our next video, we're going to cover the last 4 characteristics of living things, but hopefully you've enjoyed the first 4. Thanks for listening.